At 2:30 in the afternoon of October 6, 1973, Egyptian and Syrian artillery fired the first shots of what would become known later as the Yom Kippur War. The conflict nearly brought the Israeli state to the brink of defeat and almost started a nuclear confrontation between the Soviet Union and the United States. Happy stuff, right? The F-4E Kurnass's contribution to Israel's victory, gained almost at the jaws of defeat, it's just too much to put into one video. So we're going to look at the Kurnass contribution to this conflict and how it helped deliver Israel's victory in the form of Kurnass 109 story. We're going to look at one airplane, one crew, or multiple crews for one airplane, I should say, one aircraft, one war, one model. After significant lobbying in the United States, Lyndon Johnson approved sale of the then new F-4E for Israel in 1968. The Israeli Air Force 201 Squadron first operated the F-4E Kurnass in 1969. The name Kurnass is Hebrew for hammer, which is an appropriate description for the heavy payload F-4E Phantom II, one of the highest performing fighter bombers of the Cold War. Famously, one F-4E Phantom II could carry more bombs than the famous World War II B-17s of yore. Kurnass 109 first left the McDonnell Douglas factory in December 1969 for delivery to Israel. There is a note to make here. During this F-4 Kurnass's service history, it was renumbered twice. The Israelis restructured their inventory and computer logging system, and apparently there was some complications with the computer system not accepting more than 2 digits. So what they wound up doing is they changed the prefix of their F-4Es so that they could identify which ones were part of the first orders versus the relief F-4Es and some of the Kurnass Karpatas that came later during Operation Nickel Grass from the Yom Kippur War. As a result of all this logistical maneuvering, the designations of these F-4s changed a couple of times. In the case of Kurnass 109, it had been redesignated 609 after the war. Just bear that in mind in case you're looking up these airplane service histories and wondering why some of the details don't match, because even in doing research for this video, I made a mistake of confusing Kurnass 109, which started off as 109 and then became 609, versus Kurnass 609, which is a completely different F-4E that was then redesignated 109 and then 509 later on. So in June 1978, the F-4's career ended with a mid-air collision with an A-4 during air combat maneuvering drills. Unfortunately, it is one thing from Top Gun that is unfortunately true is that air combat maneuvering can be one of the most dangerous training evolutions that a fighter pilot can have, because essentially we have two airplanes maneuvering close to each other, and that's a recipe for disaster sometimes. So that was how this particular F-4 came to end its life. But before that, Kurnass 109, during the Yom Kippur War, logged 7 verified air-to-air kills and flew 29 combat sorties consisting of the following missions: offensive counter-air, defensive counter-air, suppression of enemy air defenses, destruction of enemy air defenses, air escort of American resupply aircraft associated with the aforementioned Operation Nickel Grass, strategic strike on high-value targets in both Egypt as well as Syria, in one case striking Damascus Air Force headquarters, as well as, last but definitely not least, close air support of Israeli army troops. Special note here, of the for 29 combat sorties over 19 days of consistent combat conditions, that ops tempo speaks very well of the IDF AF's maintenance function. In many instances, Kurnass 109 completed 2 missions in 1 day. When you think about this ops tempo and extend that to the other 107 Kurnass fighters that were active in the Israeli Air Force in October 1973, it really puts in perspective the kind of intense logistics and humanitarian effort that goes into making these fighter planes fly. I'd highly recommend those of you who are more interested in this to take a look at DieselThunder's YouTube channel. They are a team of people in the United States who maintain the, at this point, only flying F-4 in private U.S. hands. And you see the episodes he puts up with them changing the oil, with them fixing electrical problems, with them fixing electrical issues with their rectifiers, and fixing the fuel leaks with their engine fittings, and all those sorts of things that you would not think of as being important in an airplane. But that all has to be sorted before the airplane can drop a bomb or launch a missile or shoot down anything. And it's the work of those people that make it all go. Unfortunately, you don't really see that in the fun movies like Skyfighters in France or Top Gun in the U.S. You just don't. It's all highway to the danger zone montages and high-G turns. But if the maintainers on the ground don't change the oil, you don't have an airplane. And that's a very important point to note when you're looking at a situation, especially in wartime, where this one airplane flew almost 30 sorties just over not even 3 weeks, just 19 days. So that's pretty intense, and it really puts another special emphasis on the training of those people and how well built the F-4 Kurnass was. As many watching here have no doubt noticed, this model is not your typical HobbyMaster F-4E Kurnass. I have made quite a few mods to it, and among those is a change to the loadout. Out of the box, it comes with your typical 2 fuel tank, sidewinders on the inboard rails. If you want to run some other kind of payload, like most HobbyMaster setups, you're kind of out of luck, which is why I made some private changes to make Kurnass 109 look a little bit closer to what the real airplane did. In this case, the loadout you see here represents what Kurnass 109 had during a airfield suppression sortie. And this is actually one of the instances where Kurnass 109 would engage a lot of the MiGs, because what would happen is the Israelis would attack an airbase, and the goal would be to keep it offline for a given amount of time so that the ground teams in the Israeli Defense Force, essentially the Israeli army, could maneuver without worrying about being attacked by Arab air support. So to suppress the threat of Arab fighters from Egypt and Syria attacking Egyptian army units on the ground, the IDF-AF's job was to take these F-4Es, bomb the airfields, so that during that period of time when the airfield was being bombed and the cluster bombs were being removed from the airbase and that kind of thing, that airbase would obviously be out of commission. And while that may be only a few hours, that would be all the time that the Israeli ground team would need to do their mission. So this is the reason why airfield suppression was such a big deal among the other missions that these airplanes did. And for that mission, this Kurnass, as modeled 109, has 5 M117 750-pound bombs on the centerline pylon. It has 2 AIM-9s on the inner rails, one of them for self-defense. And then on the other one, you have 2 cluster bomb units. And then on the, as for the Sparrow rails, you have a QRC-160, the ECM pod, as well as a pair of Sparrows carried in the back. Also note, you may have spotted in some of my intro footage that it had an ALQ-101 installed on the ECM rail for the inboard Sparrow rail. That's because the actual airplane, Kurnass 109, had what was called a QRC 355, which is a predecessor to the ALQ 101. However, there are, as far as I know, there's no 1/72nd scale model or kit of the QRC 355. So, QRC 335. So I used the descendant version, which is the ALQ 101, in some of those shots. So those of you who may be more eagle-eyed, you jump in the comment section and say, hey, yeah, that's it's a, what's the phrase? That's an anachronistic electronic equipment fit because it didn't exist in the Yom Kippur War. Yep, 100%, but there's no QRC 335, so we have to do with what we have, right? So that's why that ALQ 101's on there. I also have the QRC 160 in the kit, and that is something, actually I do believe you get the QRC 160 with the model as it comes out of the box, which is a good ad for HobbyMaster. Fun question for those of you who have followed so far. That's not the only mods that I've put to it. So take a moment and take a look and post in the comments what other things you can spot that I have changed about it. I'm curious to see how eagle-eyed my subscriber base to the channel is. So while the model is, of course, modified, which may kind of alter the presentation a little bit, I still think that the Kurnass F-4E as depicted still deserves a place in your hangar. If you care about Cold War fighter designs, or the history of the F-4 Phantom II, or the Middle East, or the Arab-Israeli conflicts as a whole, or any of that historical arc, you have to get this. It's kind of like the Mirage 3 that I reviewed some months back. The history of this Kurnass F-4 is just, it's really too compelling to pass up. And this is one that is worth some degree of premium that you'll have to pay to get one now. This is one of those models where if you don't get it right away, they go on the secondary market and the prices start going up and away. So, without, it's easy to look at this airplane and kind of go, well, it's a nice airplane and all, but why is it so important? This particular Kurnass shot down 7 airplanes, or 7 aircraft, I should say. The first 3 were helicopters carrying commandos, and those commandos had a mission to go over the Israeli defensive positions and to destroy them, to enable, obviously, the Egyptian army to maneuver. Those 3 assault elements were shot down because this F-4E Kurnass 109 jumped in and took down those Mi-17 troop helicopters. Had that not happened, all of those helicopters would have completed their mission. All of those troops would have been able to land and do their thing. And that might well have tilted the war against Israel's survival. And I do mean survival here because at one point, the situation was so dire between the Syrians in the north and the Egyptians in the south, both attacking at the same time, that Israel was considering using nuclear weapons, and the Soviets, for their part, were about to provide nuclear weapons to Egypt on Scud launchers out of Port Said. So this could have gotten very spicy, very spicy, very quickly. And fortunately for all parties involved, the war was de-escalated by, first off, Israel securing a military victory on the field of battle. And while that, of course, wasn't the only pathway that ended the war, there was quite a bit of diplomacy between the superpowers and political maneuvering, of course. But, if it hadn't have been for the on-the-ground contributions of the Israeli military soldiers and the F-4Es, and one of which in particular, Kurnass 109, this war could have gone a very different direction, and history of the Middle East as we know it could have turned in a whole different way too. So, for those reasons, I think this one deserves a place in your collection, even if you're not necessarily inclined to modify your model the way I've done here. So with that, thank you all for watching. If you've all made it to this point, take an extra couple of minutes and hit the like button and subscribe. You'll know when I post my next video, and it's a way for you to tell me through the tools of YouTube that I'm doing a good job. It also helps the algorithm push this video to more folks, which drives conversation and interaction, And just as a note, I have to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you for subscribing. 826 subscribers. I did not think, all these years ago, I did not think that you all were as passionate about this subject, that enough people would care enough about this sort of thing to contribute and join my channel and listen to me talk about airplanes and models. I really appreciate it, and I thank each and every last one of you for making the choice to subscribe. So, and this is not something that I thought about when I set this channel up 4 years ago, but 4 years ago, excuse me, more like 5. Goodness, time's flying. But you know, in the day and age now where we're seeing AI just completely rewrite history in grotesque and unusual and completely inaccurate ways, channels like this have become more important than I even conceived of, 5 years ago, setting this channel up, because now it's more important today, now more than ever, to get the facts down, because some of the stuff I see about airplanes and technology and commentary and social media, all I do sometimes is just mentally shake my head from sun up to sundown some days. It's crazy. So thank you for supporting my channel. Definitely keep supporting those smaller channels that publish the truth about any particular thing. In this case, it's about airplanes, but I encourage you all to take a moment and send some appreciation to those creators on any topic that is of a niche nature, because the disinformation out there is real and it's major. So with that, we'll conclude that happy little tangent. Thank you for tuning in today's video. Post in the comment section what you think, and what other things y'all thought, what other things you can see that I have done to the model, and stay tuned for the next video.